softer, gentler Marty Misjuns for the rest of your term?
Could be. Maybe if you're on one side, I'm polarizing. If you're on the other side, it could be energizing. You could see evil in people's eyes. And the first time that realization hit me was when I had an opportunity to walk through those detention centers and actually see these radical Islamic terrorists. The only reason that they upheld the termination was because I spoke out against the mayor. I would have been willing to support Chris for vice mayor if Jeff would have been the mayor. I mean, so I didn't sing.
I know you didn't sing, right? But there's been singing.
So I didn't sing. I also didn't yell, turn off the press. That wasn't me. City manager just acts with impunity and does things, unauthorized pay raises for people in his own office. We don't have 4 members on city council right now that have the guts to tell him what he's doing is wrong. We only have 3. Boswell's never been to a Republican meeting in Lynchburg. He's not even on the email list. We need to focus on keeping our citizens safe and keeping their tax burden as low as we possibly can.
Welcome to another edition of No Holds Barred. I'm Rich Roth, and my guest today, Marty Misjuns. Hi, Marty.
Rich, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. I'm looking forward to this.
I am too. And I got to tell you, a lot of people, I think maybe as well. I've gotten a lot of feedback, a lot of reaction to having you on. Some positive, some negative, as you might expect. And sure. You're a very controversial figure on city council. I've heard that some people say that you even make Jeff Helgeson look agreeable.
Jeff really is the GOAT. Let's just be clear about that.
One of the things that I told you was I just wanted to kind of get to know you. I don't live in the city. I'm not involved. I'm not super engaged in following city politics. I don't necessarily want to get into the weeds on a lot of the different subjects, but it just struck me as who might be someone interesting to talk to, and your name kept coming up because you seem to be a very, very polarizing figure here in the city as of the, last 4 or 5 years. Think that's fair?
Polarizing. Maybe if you're on one side, I'm polarizing. If you're on the other side, it could be energizing.
Okay. Well, polarizing, you divide people. People are one way or another on you. I don't think there are many people who are indifferent or, Marty, I could go either way. I mean, people are either pro-Marty or anti-Marty.
I get people that are kind of in the middle.
Really?
Sure.
Tell me about that.
There's people that aren't necessarily all in on everything, but once they get to know me, it kind of changes their perspective, and maybe they aren't opposed anymore.
Well, I want to get to know you.
Sure. And
our listeners, and if people are watching, our viewers will get to know you. Like I told you, the radio portion of this will be edited for time, but this entire conversation will be up on all the different podcast channels. So I want to be totally fair. And, like I said, in kind of leading up to this, I've done an awful lot of background gathering information.
Sure.
On you, talking to pro-Marty people, anti-Marty people, and there were even 1, 2, 3 of your colleagues who didn't want to talk to me at all about you. I bet you could probably guess who they are.
I'm not going to speculate.
Why stop now, Marty?
Because I typically don't speculate.
You don't?
No.
Let's get to know you a little bit.
Absolutely.
We'll dive into all this stuff, the lawsuit against the city council, the Republicans being divided, how that all started. I'm curious about that because I feel like a lot of people may be in a similar situation to me, in which they don't sit there, they don't watch every city council meeting, they don't know everything that's going on. But they hear about things on the news, in the newspaper, on the morning line, and they form opinions of you based on that. And that's probably not fair. But, that's what a lot of folks do, right? If they're not totally engaged, they form opinions based on the stuff they see and hear. So I want to give them an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better.
Sure. And that's how rhetoric works, right? You have lots of rhetorical stuff out there, and then a lot of times the rhetoric is absent of the facts, right? So that's what I'm looking forward to here, is getting to the facts and discussing those things.
You know, in speaking with you, I think I've gotten to the potential root of the problem.
What is it?
You're from Philly.
Well,
that explains a lot.
I can't help where I was born, right? So that could explain a lot. But yes, that is correct. I was born in Philadelphia, moved to Bucks County at a young age. I don't remember really living in Philadelphia. I remember
Bucks County is a suburb. Yeah.
Correct. So I remember being there. Then I moved here in '96 when I was a teenager.
Let's talk a little bit about everything leading up to working at the fire department, the lawsuit, city council. Let's back up a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your background. You've got some military background, served for a number of years in the Coast Guard, or overseas Operation Iraqi Freedom in Kuwait.
Correct. That's correct.
And then you spent some time at Guantanamo Bay, and I found that all to be pretty interesting. I mean, talk a little bit about that experience. I mean, let's start with the Middle East.
Thank you. So, can we back up and do Guantanamo Bay first?
Yeah,
since we can keep it in order, because that was earlier.
That's fine. Yeah, that was earlier, right?
Correct. So really, the thing that kind of threw my life a different direction was 9/11. I was just a typical kid that went to boot camp when I was 17. I guess maybe that wasn't typical because not many 17-year-olds were there. 2 weeks after my 17th birthday, and that was in 2000. Bill Clinton was president. Then a year later, I was in my advanced training in Yorktown during the summer after my first year of college. 9/11 happened. When that was wrapping up, I actually graduated from Gunner's Mate A School, as it's called, on September 14th, 2001, if I remember correctly. Got my first set of active duty orders. And then after that, it was global war on terrorism. Hey, we need you again. And you just kept going. So I went to Cuba in 2005. I was down there. Beautiful place. Mm-hmm. Guantanamo Bay is just really unbelievable. One of the things that I remember, because my dad, he was a Philadelphia police officer when I was, before I was born, but you never took that away from him. He actually got the Commendation of Valor from Mayor Rizzo, who was a polarizing figure. And one of the things that he always used to tell me was that you could see evil in people's eyes. And the first time that realization hit me was when I had an opportunity to walk through those detention centers and actually see these radical Islamic terrorists. And you can tell when they look at you that they want you dead. And I just kept going back to that memory of my father telling me that, and then seeing it for the first time that down there was just really just an incredible thing.
And that was kind of the first time you saw that then.
First time I saw it.
You heard him say it, you're like, okay, yeah, whatever, Dad. And then all of a sudden that memory got triggered when you're down at Gitmo.
Because you could tell they wanted to kill you.
You know, you told me something interesting when we spoke prior to today, and that was that experience in Guantanamo Bay was the first time that you really that it clicked for you, the distrust you have for the mainstream media. Explain.
Absolutely. So I was down there again, like I said, it was 05, 06, and I remember we were able to watch CNN and other news outlets on the Armed Forces Network, the TV network for when you're deployed in certain areas, and they kept showing like the B-roll footage of this place called Camp X-Ray with detainees in it. And that's what they would constantly show about the conditions that these terrorists were kept in. And they were basically like dog kennels is what they looked like. Well, I saw Camp X-Ray pretty soon after I got down there, and it was empty. And it was empty the entire time I was there. And all of the terrorists were detained in either semi-permanent modular style facilities or actual concrete buildings. But the mainstream media continued to push this propaganda that the United States was housing these people in inhumane conditions, which was furthest from the truth. And, you talk to everybody that's down there. One of the things that was interesting also that I discovered down there was how much we were paying as taxpayers to feed these people ethnic and culturally appropriate foods that were halal. That it actually cost them more to feed these terrorist detainees than they paid to feed their own troops, our own troops.
Wow.
So that just speaks volumes to me about how, as a nation, we are when it comes to things like that, and how we go above the extra mile to make sure we're doing things the right way.
What was your role down there?
So I ran an armory, and then I also backed up our waterborne operations division sometimes when we had certain operations going on, like detainee movement operations. And we did the port, waterways, coastal security for the Bay with the Navy. It was a Coast Guard unit. A lot of people would probably consider it like an expeditionary warfare role sort of situation. And my job was primary job was to make sure all the guns worked, make sure all the ammo was serviceable, and to make sure everybody was trained.
Other than, getting a chance to see the terrorists, look in their eyes, see the lack of transparency, maybe that's not the best way to put it, about the mainstream media with Camp X-Ray. Was there anything else about your time at Guantanamo Bay that really stood out to you?
It was just interesting to see how different it was being in a country like Cuba, that is a communist country. On the other side of the fence, because there was a fence that surrounded the whole treaty area that the United States controls, was a minefield. And there were these things called banana rats down there, these huge banana rats. And every now and then, either a banana rat or maybe a big iguana, because they had the rock iguanas down there too, would hit one of those mines, and you'd see it go off in the distance.
Wow.
And it was just a very kind of a eerie feeling and a humbling feeling, knowing that communism still exists in the world. And my family, my dad came over from West Germany on a boat when he was very young, and his parents fled Latvia because Latvia became part of the Soviet Union. So they fled communism after World War II and came to the United States, and they could never go back.
And now here you are.
And now here I am seeing, my first time being, granted I was on the base, but being in a communist country and seeing things like minefields surrounding, it's just very, it was a very interesting thing, because it's a beautiful place, and there's no reason that the people of Cuba couldn't prosper with the real estate they have down there.
Did you ever get a chance to go into the country, into the communist?
No, you're not allowed.
Okay.
So you go to the gate.
Then you had an opportunity, as you said earlier, to go to the Middle Eastern Operation Iraqi Freedom in Kuwait. What was that like? So
that was right when Iraqi Freedom spun down. I went over in December, and then Operation New Dawn started on January 1. And it was interesting. Again, completely different culture, completely different place. You were definitely in a place where you kind of always were paying attention when you were off base, because we were able to go off base there to go to different facilities, because you never knew who was there or what was going to happen. Granted, I didn't get to see any combat or anything like that. There was none of that going on in Kuwait at the time. But one thing also that was very interesting was the esteem that the Kuwaiti people had for Americans. Because
very high respect.
Unbelievable, because they wouldn't really exist as a nation if it wasn't for what we did in 91 when they liberated Kuwait from Saddam Hussein. Mm-hmm. So I got to see on one of the seawalls, because we were on the Kuwaiti naval bases where we were, what was described to me by locals as where they assassinated the Kuwaiti naval forces, where the Iraqis did.
Wow.
Back in that time. And you could see the pock marks in the concrete wall behind it. And again, it just shows you that there are evil people out there that want to do harm. And it's very interesting to see that happening in our own nation today, right now, in places like Minnesota.
I was going to say, I would assume that gives you a very different perspective on things than folks who have never been to, a communist country or stood in war zones.
Correct.
And seen how, folks live in other countries.
Absolutely. And it also, understanding that the effects of policy decisions too, because, looking back, do I think that we needed to send those American soldiers, those young American men and women, to Iraq for all those years and spend that much money, spill that much blood in another nation? No, I don't know that was the right thing. Did we need to take out Osama bin Laden? Absolutely. Right. But I don't think that we needed to spill so much American blood and treasure over there. That's the other aspect of it. And when you see that, you then understand the effects of policy. And when you're in a policymaking role, you look at, hey, is this a policy decision that I'm going to be proud of, or that I'm going to be still in support of 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if it remains in place?
So you have those two experiences overseas. You spend a lot of time in the Coast Guard. At what point do you wind up coming back to Lynchburg?
So I was in the reserves the entire time I was in the Coast Guard, and I was mobilized. I can't remember exactly how many times. I think when I did the math, in my 22 years in the Coast Guard, I spent about 5 or 6 years of that time in a uniform. Mm-hmm. So when I looked at it from that aspect, I was kind of in and out. So I was still always here. This was always my home, but I would, points where I was in the Portsmouth, Norfolk area for 2 years on active duty, overseas, different places, going away for training, other orders that I received for different projects that I worked on. But I started working at the fire department in Lynchburg in 2007, because when the deployment hit for Guantanamo Bay, prior to that, I was actually building homes. And when I got deployed building homes, I just felt like it wasn't really a good thing for me to come back as things were ramping up with all the global war on terrorism operations happening, to get back into that.
Why?
When you're building somebody's house and you got to get deployed, that's really not a good thing. So
what type of heads up you have when you get deployed?
I was in a unit that at the deployment, we were supposed to be able to be there within 24 hours when they called us, and anywhere in the world within 96 after that.
How often did that happen where it didn't? To be? Okay.
But there was one time that I had to be there. I got a phone call and they said, you got to be here at 4 a.m. the next morning. And that was for a tropical storm that was coming in, and we had to provide the force protection for the Atlantic fleet, because they were going to send them out to the ocean because they get damaged when they're in port at Naval Base Norfolk. And we ended up getting everything outfitted. We go sit out on the boats next to the aircraft carriers and submarines for hours. And then they say, oh, forecast changed. It's not going to be as bad as we thought. We're not going anywhere. So it was the one time that they said, you got to be here the next day.
You're at the mercy of Mother Nature,
whatever.
huh?
Yeah, that's what happened.
So obviously with those experiences, the importance to you, I'm assuming, of serving.
Absolutely.
And putting yourself potentially in harm's way, becoming a firefighter seems like sort of a natural progression.
It was great.
You did it for how long?
Almost 15 years, I think. I know it was at least 14. I'm not sure exactly how many months after that. And I was also really enjoyed the medical side of it too, and became a paramedic pretty quick after I got on the department. I think I wrapped that up so I got hired in 2007. I became a paramedic, I think, by 2010, 2011, somewhere in there.
When did it start going wrong with the fire department?
So when it started going wrong with the fire department was actually was twofold. It was the financial crisis, right?
0809.
So that was early on. And then, that's right. So it was like fiscal year 2010. And they kept telling us, oh, yeah, there's no money for raises. Oh, there's no money for raises. And then a period of time went by where we watched the budget for the city grow, the revenue for the city grow. And this is firefighters in general working for the Lynchburg Fire Department at a faster pace than the rate of inflation. But they couldn't keep the compensation for their people up. So the only time we were getting increases in our salaries was if their base pay went up or if you got promoted. So I got promoted the first time to master firefighter. I don't remember what year exactly. It was the first time I was eligible for promotional process. I participated in the promotional process and I got promoted pretty quickly. And then the second time for captain, kind of a similar thing, except it took a little longer because there were less positions, and I was a little lower on the list for captain than I was on the master firefighter list. And when we saw that happening to the guys that worked there 10, 15, 20 years longer than me, people that were some of the best firefighters that you could have, but didn't want to get promoted, and they're relying on the base pay to go up to get salary increases in some cases, that was wasn't good. It's kind of demoralizing. And so we got to work, and I was part of the Lynchburg Firefighters Association, and we started a political action committee. Then in 2020, which was the COVID election year, right, was the last May city council election.
So this went on
for
about a decade, right? Because you said it started in
we were always trying
10.
to advocate for, hey, there's more money coming into the city. Why aren't we? We were getting financial analysis done from the International Association of Firefighters and so forth. And we were just trying to figure out why was government growing, government spending was growing, but the people that were actually doing the work, the boots on the ground, weren't being taken care of. And that's when the Democrats were in charge of city council, obviously, that whole time period. And then when 2020 happened, May, that was the COVID year, we set up a political action committee and we endorsed the Republicans. Abe Lober, who almost took out Mary Jane Dolan. It was like 100 votes, I think, in that election. It was a difference. Larry Taylor, Jeff Helgeson, and Chris Ferraldi. And we supported them. We ran ads for them. We did all kinds of different things to support their campaigns.
How involved were you in that committee?
I was pretty much the sole guy.
So that really was the beginning.
That was the beginning of me being involved in politics. Mm-hmm. We had people
and just supporting other people, helping to raise money.
It's time to fire these people that have been downtown for so long, that were absolutely screwing over the boots on the ground that deliver the services to our citizens, and bring in people that will actually treat tax dollars the way they should be treated and take care of the people that put their lives on the line for the citizens. And
at this point, all's cool with you in the fire department. There are no issues, no disciplinary.
It's about where it started. Was and it wasn't really disciplinary stuff, but it was little things like you put in for a training class. I put in for a training class that I was the only person that didn't get an approved training request back.
And do you feel like this was because of your involvement?
To his credit, when it got to Wormser's desk on the day the class started, and I wasn't there, and they said, "Why isn't he here?" And I didn't have an approved training request. They called me and tried to figure out how to get it done, but I wasn't able to be that flexible and get down there that day. And but Jonathan Wright was the battalion chief of training at the time, I believe. So, there's that. But little things like that. And we just started to feel those little bits of pressure, like they wanted me to stop talking.
And you felt like it had to do with your involvement in politics, it supporting Republicans, just being involved, raising money? What did you feel like it was?
I felt like it was all of the above. Mm-hmm. It was really just, it was because we were speaking out against the people that were currently in office, is really what it came down to. Then there were also some issues with some FOIA requests while I worked at the fire department, where we as the association looked for information using the Freedom of Information Act. And the first time was pretty cordial. I noticed some things in what they provided that there was clearly something missing. Went to court, judge looked at it, gave the city attorney an opportunity to go back and take a look, Walter Irwin. And then I believe it was the same day he called me and said, hey, you were right. There was some things we missed. We're going to get that right to you. Problem solved. Second time was over the Corn Ferry salary study. That was a salary study that the city council had voted to pay for, bringing these consultants in to do it. And then they voted to implement it. I can't remember if they had implemented phase 1 or phase 2 at that point. And the Freedom of Information Act is pretty clear about consultant reports. Once a governing body has acted on a consultant report, it's no longer what's called working papers, which I'm sure you've done Freedom of Information Acts before, right?
No, not me personally. I know we have, yeah.
But
I haven't gotten involved in a lot of that stuff.
So the working papers doctrine is something that allows an exemption for the working papers of like a city manager when it's for their deliberative use for something to help them, guide them to make decisions that hasn't really been acted on yet. Something that is truly it's their thing, right? Mm-hmm. So that they can use that information to help guide their executive decision making. But once the city council acts on something, it's no longer in that stage. So we asked for it. They wouldn't give it to us. So we went to court. That was the first time I ever met Matt Friedman. And we actually got a written order of mandamus that ordered the city to release that salary study. Now, the interesting thing is how that went down. So I'm not a lawyer, never claimed to be one. Don't think I want to be one. But what I didn't understand and learned in that process was entities don't have any rights under the Freedom of Information Act. Individuals do. So when I filed it, I was filing it as the vice president of the local 1146 for the Firefighters Association. So it was the Firefighters Association versus City of Lynchburg. So that's a technicality, right? And it's a standing issue. So they appealed it, didn't even really know that they had appealed it right away. And Jamie Maxwell and I went to City Hall, walked right in the front door. Once we got a copy of the written order of mandamus, and went up the elevator, knocked on the HR door. Michelle Jackson let us in, gave her a copy of the order and said, hey, we want the salary study. And she said, oh, it's been appealed. I understand that it's been appealed, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have to do what the court told you to do. That was my interpretation of it. And that's one of the things that they actually had in my disciplinary stuff when they fired me was for coming into City Hall as an employee. We had shirts that had like International Association of Firefighters seals on them. We weren't wearing uniforms. We were both off duty, but they tried to claim that I was there as an employee.
Gotcha.
That was one of the things. And that became an issue for them too. But what they ended up doing is they just released the report because they knew, because I got an attorney at that point to represent us in circuit court on the appeal. And I think once they understood that, they knew that they were going to lose. So you just released it.
You're getting more involved politically. You're starting to file Freedom of Information requests. Your interpretation is the fire department's getting more and more fed up, frustrated, pushing back against you even more.
Absolutely.
And then It all hits the fan when?
I decided to post a nationally syndicated political cartoon of clearly what looks to be like men dressed like women scaring little girls out of bathrooms in January of 2021. And I shared it, if I remember correctly, with the caption, #Biden erased women, coming to your daughter's high school locker room in the near future. And that's when they were pushing the Equality Act.
And this is just on your personal Facebook page.
It's a page that I use primarily for political use because I was also involved with the Lynchburg Republican Party at that time. And
as
me,
well, but also as a leader of
I was
the firefighters.
Sure, but I was it didn't say anything. It didn't have any of that stuff on there. That was its own page, its own thing. It said Ward 1 GOTV chair, whatever the title was they gave me at the time. Never probably said public figure, probably said something else, but it never associated me with the Lynchburg Fire Department whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I posted that, and then I get tipped off by Chris Feraldi, who's a council member at the time, and he starts sending me these emails of these complaints coming in from these notable hardcore leftists. Now I really know who they are after being on city council for 3 years. But these notable hardcore leftists in the city, same people that are indivisible Lynchburg, it's the same group of people. They're making demands that I be fired, disciplined, whatever. And so then somebody else with the Firefighters Association puts in a Freedom of Information Act request to get all the emails once Chris tipped us off. So we get them. And there's emails of Mary Jane Dolan and Bo Wright and Reed Wotica going back and forth. And Mary Jane Dolan's pretty much saying that we can't tolerate this. Something's got to be done. And then I start getting this pressure. Figured something else out too when I went back and looked through it after we talked. Hill City Pride, which I don't even know if they're a thing anymore. They were like the local LGBTQ plus advocacy organization. And an interesting story. The gentleman who was the board chair.
Okay.
When we deposed him, he's the nicest guy.
Is that right?
We had a great conversation. I actually gave him a hug afterwards and told him I forgave him. It was really wild, but that was years later. They started pushing the media pressure on their end. I saw that as what the mayor was doing, Mary Jane Dolan at the time, was really just a violation of her oath. So I talked to some people, friends of mine in the Republican Party, and people in the Firefighters Association, and decided to do a petition asking the mayor to honor her oath or resign.
So now you're all in.
So now I'm all in. And then I was sitting right there with Mary and Brian, and they interviewed me over the petition. And I think WSLS interviewed me. Can't remember if anybody else did. And then days later, after I started saying something in the media to defend myself, after I was getting attacked in the media, Greg Wormser walks into my office at the station, hands me a letter, tells me I'm under investigation for these social media posts. This is in March. The posts were in January. And they actually had a gag order written into it. That pretty much, if I talked about it from that point forward, I would get, I could get charged with insubordination. So I just stopped talking about it.
So problem goes away. No big deal.
And then we filed the lawsuit.
All right.
Then we filed the lawsuit.
Okay.
And then shortly after the lawsuit was filed, then I get another letter of investigation that is completely bogus and baseless, with all these claims that had no names attached to them, no dates, no places, no events, just all of this stuff. And I've actually seen this happen to other employees now that I've been on city council who've brought me the same things. It's just a pattern. I recognize what they do. Then they put me on administrative leave to investigate me. I was on administrative leave from June to October.
Mm-hmm.
I kept the pile of correspondence that went back and forth during that whole time period, because I forced it all to be in writing to protect myself, was incredible. And I kept asking over and over them for them to comply with the policy, because you're supposed to get names, dates, places, all of the relevant information to be able to defend yourself against complaints. They never gave it to me. It was a witch hunt. And then they bring me in sometime in October. And the interesting thing is when you looked at the timeline, right? So you had two parallel investigations. You had the social media post investigation, then you had the workplace complaint investigation. So they open the social media post investigation. It doesn't close. They open the workplace complaint investigation. That goes on from May or June or whenever that started until August or September. It closes. And then the investigation report for the social media post comes after that.
So that came first, but then they pursued the other one.
The social media post is, hey, we got to do something about this. Then clearly they can't fire me for that, right? So they've got to come up with something else to do it. So once they figure they think they've got it, they close that. Then they go back and close the original investigation. And I never get any information, any relevant information. We didn't get any names or anything about, who these complainants were or anything like that, up until we were supposed to go to trial. Because at one point we were supposed to go to trial. I believe that was in June of 2024, maybe. It all kind of blends together. And, they were
got a lot going on, man.
They were trying to prevent that information from being exposed for quite a long time.
Okay, so you get let go when?
October of 2021.
October of 2021. And it's when, 2023, that you decide to run for council?
22.
Okay. So not long after, you're in, it started out with the police, with the firefighters.
Sure.
Looking for more money. You get involved politically. You run, you put out this political cartoon. They don't like it. You say that they found another reason to get rid of you.
Correct.
And now, you're done with the police, the fire department. I keep saying police, but the fire department. And you decide at that point, was it at that point that, hey, I got to run for city council, or I got to?
It wasn't at that point. It wasn't at that exact point.
At what point was it where you said, I'm suing the city, but I got to run for city council?
So let me give you a little more background information. That's pretty interesting. I ended up using the grievance process. I went through the employee appeal board. That was in early 2022. So before that, I think, is when I decided. But in that process, so that employee appeal board, that's city council appointees and there's a supervisory, non-supervisory city employee. After the fact, I learned, because it just happened to be that somebody that was on that employee appeal board our sons ended up being in preschool together the next fall. She told me that the only reason that they upheld the termination was because I spoke out against the mayor. Otherwise, they would have overturned it. I think I've even got an affidavit that says that from her that was included. So, that's interesting, right? And we shouldn't have elected officials that govern like that are trying to terminate people for speaking out against whatever it is they're doing. That shouldn't be the case. It should be totally performance-based, merit-based.
Of course. And I would think most people would agree with that. I mean, if in fact you were fired and not reinstated just because the mayor was ticked off that, you spoke out against her, I would think most people would think that's wrong.
And I've also learned something else from that process that I was told then from her.
Her being not the mayor.
The employee appeal board member, council appointed board and commission, and then saw it again with another board and commission that apparently I think when staff is guiding these things, because like employee appeal board, that's guided by somebody from HR. There's different boards and commissions that are guided. I'm going to speculate.
You said you weren't going to do that.
Got a hunch.
Okay.
But it seems from the information that I've been provided by these board members that what staff tells them is that there has to be consensus in their decision. So even if somebody disagrees with the decision or votes against the decision, that's what I was told by this employee appeal board member was they made her sign her name to it as if she supported it. And then we saw something very similar to that happen at the towing advisory board. I'm sure Brian and Mary would probably remember that. That was kind of a big thing because there was
they might. I don't.
There was a lot of local media controversy about that situation.
Right. So I want to get back to your decision to run for council because at the time you've got a lawsuit. Sure. A lot of people are like, how can you be suing the city and then trying to run for city council? What made you decide to do it? What was the aha moment that said, you know what, I've got to be more involved. I got to run for council.
Somebody had to. I saw
somebody had to run?
Somebody had to run.
Okay.
Right. I saw so there's that. I'm involved in the Lynchburg Republican Party at the time. Somebody had to run, right? People had to run. And I saw that the elections were moved because of the state law change, that the city council elections have been moved to November. Mm-hmm. And I did the analysis and it was clear to me that Republicans were going to win, period, hands down. That when you look at Lynchburg historically, in November, Lynchburg votes red. In May, they didn't. But Republicans win in November in Lynchburg. If they show up and vote, they win. That's what it was. So I saw that as an opportunity.
Why did you want to be on city council?
Because I saw how bad the leadership was in the city.
And you didn't feel like other people in the Republican Party you didn't think could do the job like you? No, not that. But it was, we had a mass meeting. I can't remember exactly how many people participated, but I had a relationship with Larry from supporting him, knocking doors with him, campaigning for him in 2020, and he was supportive of me running. So, we worked together on that in for the mass meeting to get nominated, and I saw what these people were capable of. I know what they're capable of. People. Who are these people? The bureaucrats. Okay. And I've seen it happen since I've been on council. City manager, his staff. Absolutely. I can tell you a story about how they fired Brian Smith and then they had to eat crow and bring him back. He was a highly decorated Lynchburg police officer that was targeted. It was a situation where he had been charged with assault by his neighbor for knocking on the guy's door, if I remember this correctly. And he knocked on the door, and then there was some kind of altercation, and Brian defended himself after the guy had just yelled and screamed at his wife and baby. And Brian lived in the city. And the guy filed charges, because in Virginia, it's pretty easy to get a warrant for something like that. He was cleared. But the Lynchburg Police Department decided that what happened in court wasn't good enough, and they launched their own internal investigation. Brian provided all the documents to me. And they decided that they thought he did commit a crime. And they recommended termination. Fortunately, Brian was able to get legal counsel from the PBA. He did the grievance process. But at the same time, Jeff Helgeson and I, we went and met with city manager, city attorney, and said, hey, this is an issue here. This is a guy who was truly a leader of men in that organization, and he still is. And people looked up to him. The boots on the ground in that police department looked up to him. And what does it look like when you've got some defund the police activist
that goes and pulls a warrant on a police officer, right? He's never found guilty of anything. But then you do an internal investigation. It's like, oh, we don't agree with the judge. We think he committed a crime. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Right? What does that do for the morale for those officers? It doesn't. It's bad. So that's why we went and talked to the city manager and city attorney about it. If you look at the first line of my first censure, where it talks about getting involved in personnel matters, that's what it was. That's what they were referencing. They hated the fact that we brought that up because we said, Jeff and I said, we don't think it's a good idea. You shouldn't fire this guy. It's not going to work out. Well, guess what? It didn't work out. Through the grievance process, they violated policy. The city violated policy. They never should have fired him. They had to give him his job back. And that's that. And he is doing a phenomenal job for the citizens of Lynchburg today. Okay. We are a safer city when he's there. So,
again, circling back to your decision to run.
Sure.
So you knew the Republicans were going to win. The elections were moved to November. You surveyed the situation. You decide you wanted to run. You jump in.
Absolutely.
You get nominated.
I did.
You win the election.
I won the election.
So you're going in with?
Larry Taylor and Stephanie Reed.
Larry Taylor and Stephanie Reed. 6 Republicans, 1 Democrat.
There was 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats.
5 and 2. Okay, right. Now it's 6 and 1.
They would say they were independents, but we all know they were Democrats.
Okay. 5 and 2. You go in with Stephanie and Larry. Jeff and Chris are already in. That's the 5. You need 4 to have a majority. It's all good to go until
Chris Feraldi and Stephanie Reed do not want to meet with the 5 of us before we get sworn in. So the open meeting laws don't apply before you're sworn in. So from November to January, the 5 of us could meet. We did.
And so just 2 current council members.
2 current council members.
That's Jeff and Chris. Right.
So that's
what's the maximum number?
2.
It's 2. So you got those 2. You 3 plus are going in, yep. But you're not in yet.
Correct.
So you can all meet.
Correct.
You meet once at Jeff's house.
We meet once at Jeff's house.
Planning. Hey, we got the majority. Here's how it's going to go.
Talking about what issues are we going to address? What are the things that are important? Obviously the primary thing is taxes at the local level, right?
Mm-hmm. And everybody's on board with this because everybody ran on this.
Bureaucrats want to tax and spend. Mm-hmm. That's what they do. They put the spending first, and then they think they can just go take as much money as they want from the citizens, from the individuals and families and businesses of our community to basically fund whatever these bureaucratic pipe dreams are that they have.
So this is about where I become interested in city council for the first time ever.
Were you out of the city then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was out of the city. Had knew a little bit about Jeff's reputation as a, I don't know what you want to call it, curmudgeon, troublemaker, whatever. I mean, he was always the guy that was kind of the no guy, right? No, we can't do this. And he was always in the minority. So he was always...
He wasn't as much no as people realize, though, if you actually go back and look.
But I was saying the perception, right? But he'd been there forever, paid his dues. You assumed that he was going to be the guy who's elected mayor. And all of a sudden... it's Stephanie, and she just got elected, had no experience in city government, correct?
Correct.
She had just moved to Lynchburg.
Pretty much.
So here's someone who's new to Lynchburg, has never been in politics, and
keep that in mind that the background where she came from, being a Air Force spouse, living on Air Force bases, probably living off bases too in some places, wherever it was, that's a very government centric lifestyle for so many years, right? So it's actually all big government that funds that type of lifestyle, and I get that and understand that from being in the service, right? Air Force bases are incredible. They're like little cities in some cases, but it's. Government provides everything there.
So, all right. So help me understand this. So, I'm sitting here and it's like, okay, Republicans have won, 5-2. The whole thing's changing on city council. Jeff's been there, a bunch of new people. Hey, Jeff's the mayor.
Are you asking how did it happen?
Jeff's the mayor. Wait, no, he's not the mayor.
Sure.
And, it's like, what happened here? Chris and Stephanie.
They made a deal with the Democrats. I don't know what the deal was.
Why?
I don't know. I know that Chris had told me previously that one of his aspirations was to be the youngest mayor in Lynchburg's history. Mm-hmm. That's very self-centered and not citizen-centered, right?
But it wasn't him. He didn't get to be the mayor.
Well, I don't think that he could get there.
Okay.
That's just my hunch, because if you think just the year before, he got the nasty letter from Mary Jane Dolan about his outburst in the school board meeting. Mm-hmm. So Chris had already gotten a reputation for himself for having those outbursts.
Okay, so I want you to speculate.
You want me to speculate?
You said you weren't going to, but then you did. So I'm going to ask now.
I'm going to try to avoid it, but I might give you something.
Well, I'm just curious. Okay. I'm just curious. 5 people going in, all Republicans. I'm curious as to why you think that they did an end around, went behind the other 3 Republicans' backs, made a deal with the Democrats to get Stephanie elected as the mayor and Chris as the vice mayor. Why do you think they did that? Because otherwise, you're sitting there, 5 Republicans, this should be easy. Let's all get along and we'll get everything we want.
In the conversations that we were having initially, there was very little support for Chris as vice mayor between myself and Larry and Jeff. So I imagine that probably hurt Chris a little bit since he was an incumbent. Mm-hmm. And I even tried to reach out to Chris, but he wouldn't respond before the meeting where we voted. I would have been willing to support Chris for vice mayor if Jeff would have been the mayor, mm-hmm. because it felt like it could have been natural that way.
The 2 Republicans with experience on council. Yep. Kind of makes sense.
Kind of makes perfect sense. But once that deal was made, they weren't responding. And we talked about Freedom of Information Act requests. I did a Freedom of Information Act request on Stephanie's city cell phone because they gave us phones before we even got, before we even got sworn in, we got the phones. And she was definitely talking to Mary Jane Dolan in the phone records. So clearly, there was some kind of speculation deal made there with the Democrats. And when you give this city a 5-2 Republican majority for the Republican volunteers, donors, and voters that went out there and put you there, and then you let the Democrats decide who the leadership is, it's not right.
You know what cracked me up?
What's that?
So after all that happens, right? And I'll say again, my perception, Jeff gets screwed out of being the mayor because of the deal, whatever happened with Chris and Stephanie and the Democrats. That happens. And then it's, let's put the past behind us and let's all get along. And that's coming from Stephanie as the mayor. It's like, wait a second, you just screwed somebody over. Again, my perception of what happened. At
Knife's still in your back, right?
Now we should all get along.
Now that I got what I want, we should all get along.
That's how it seemed to me.
Sure, absolutely. And that's how it felt. I'd actually made a pledge to be silent for 6 months.
How long did that last?
When they did what they did, I called the people that I had made that pledge to and said, this was wrong. Do I still have to be silent? And I got consensus, a green light from the people that I made a pledge to that had far more experience in government and governing bodies than I did. Mentors, as you will. And they said, no, you can take the gloves off.
Okay, so forgive the language, but really, I think the only way to accurately describe what happened after that is the whole thing turned into a shit show. right? I mean, it really did. I mean, you and Jeff on one side, and it felt like no matter what happened, there was going to be constant arguing, and, it was going to be tough for Jeff to put it behind him. Again, my perspective. So, whatever was going on, there wasn't going to be any agreement because of the hard feelings.
I wouldn't necessarily take it that far that there would never be any agreement. But what Jeff and I were fighting for was what the voters wanted. And what the voters wanted was for the bureaucrats, the tax and spend bureaucrats, to not be in the driver's seat anymore. Chris and Stephanie and the Democrats put them right back in the driver's seat, kept them in the driver's seat. So what Jeff and I were fighting for, and Larry was with us in the beginning, was to deliver for the citizens. That's what it came down to.
I had Sterling. I had a conversation with him back in the fall, and I asked him.
He's a nice guy.
I asked him about council, and I'll ask you the same question in just a second. But he said it was, it got bad, and Jeff was really tough to deal with. And I said, well, Jeff's gone now. How are things going? And he's like, it's even worse. He didn't go as far as to say he wanted Jeff back, but he said things are even worse. So I'll ask you the same question I asked him. Are you embarrassed by the perception and by what's going on at City Council with meetings and yelling and singing? And
So I didn't sing.
I know you didn't sing, right? But there's been singing.
So I didn't sing. I also didn't yell, turn off the press. That wasn't me.
But the whole thing of City Council right now, since you guys came in, are you embarrassed by what it's become?
So it's happening all over the country right now.
I understand.
Am I embarrassed by it? I think that we need to have robust debate right now. We should have disagreement. And if you pay attention and you look at when things really get heated, is usually when they're trying to shut somebody down from getting their opinion across, or for getting their point out there, or for trying to just completely thwart something for the sake of thwarting it.
But it's gone too far. You'd agree there.
I think it's gotten pretty far. I don't think it's
nearly confrontations in hallways. Is this all?
What are you doing? What's the city attorney doing, leaving his post as the parliamentarian in the middle of a meeting? So he's supposed to be up there. What's he doing going back in the back and having, there's that. I went back there to get a cup of coffee. I find the city attorney and Chris Ferraldi back there. Chris starts yelling. Okay. Can I go get my coffee now? Every time it's interesting if the people that are really paying attention, because you don't watch the meetings, do you?
I don't.
Do you watch the work sessions?
No.
There are people that watch the work sessions and the meetings religiously. And the people that are really tuned in and paying attention, what they recognize is when I've got some questions that I'm asking that might uncover something, right? You'll then hear like some kind of outburst out of Chris usually. Or it's always some sort of attempt to, basically create some kind of chaos because of some outburst somewhere. What happens is when there's substantive things going forward. I'll give you a prime example.
Okay.
Right. So in one of our recent work sessions over the Emergency Operations Center discussion, where they came in and they brought all the different people and kind of did a brief like they would in an emergency planning meeting during an incident, they gave us an opportunity to ask questions at the end. So I didn't want to come out and say it. I didn't want to be so direct. So I asked questions that could have maybe got us there. But the reality is, our one emergency services specialist for the city of Lynchburg is a full-time resident of Alabama, living in Alabama, working remotely. And I want to know that if we have a no warning event, not a big snowfall that we know is coming 2 weeks out, 1 week out, 3 days out in the forecast, if we have something that happens like a duress show at 2 a.m, or God forbid an active shooter incident, right? What are the redundancies in place to make sure that our emergency operations center is going to be operating within the time frame it needs to be operating and fully state, like, what are the redundancies in place? And she's wonderful. She's an incredible employee.
Right, but she's in Alabama.
Yeah. And I think that's a real concern. And they shut me down from asking those questions and then turned around and said I was harassing employees. I'm not harassing anybody.
Okay.
That's what they do, is they just throw in this rhetoric that is intended to distract and divide.
Okay.
Instead of getting to substance. And that's what I want to get to, is the substance.
I get that.
Sure.
But you're a confrontational guy.
Do you feel confronted right now?
Not right now.
Okay.
Not right now.
Just want to get that on the record.
We're good. I mean, this is, I have to be honest. It's not, I'm not talking to the Marty Misjuns that I've heard so much about.
What did I tell you earlier when people get to know me?
You did say that. But here's where what I'd like to know. Again, do I watch the city council meetings? No. What percentage of Lynchburg citizens do you think watch the city council meetings?
Not as many as.
I mean, take a guess. 10%? I mean, less?
Probably less.
Okay. And what percent watch the work sessions?
Even less.
Okay. So, when you're talking about the people who do that, it's a very, very small percentage. Yep. So people are getting their information from other places.
Absolutely. Whether
it be the clips they hear on the radio, what they see on TV, what they see in the newspaper. What do you feel like? And I'm not talking about the 10% or less that watch this and know what's going on intimately with city council. But the rest of us who are just on the outside and we expect that this is going to go, and it's business as usual, but no, it's the word I used before. It's a shit show. What do you think their perception is of you?
It depends on who you ask.
Well,
because I was talking to somebody on the way in here. Literally, the words out of her mouth were, "Be yourself. We need that. We need that." There's a lot going on that we haven't even scratched the surface on, right? If people understood how this city manager just acts with impunity and does things, unauthorized pay raises for people in his own office in fiscal year 2025.
Unauthorized.
We authorized a 3% general wage increase, right? He gives his deputy city manager 13.3%. He gives his executive assistant 20%. He gives his special assistant, creates a position that we didn't create without a council vote, right? Creates an additional position.
How does that happen?
Because we don't have 4 members on city council right now that have the guts to tell him what he's doing is wrong. We only have 3. Creates a position, a 6-figure position, a new position without a council vote, just sends us an email and says, we've created this position. We're moving this employee into it. It's a 6-figure position. She got a 20% increase going into that. Well, and then they turn around, right? When I ask for the information about the salaries, and they send me this email, this memo that has all the salary detail, and it's got footnotes on it and this, that, and the other. And it was this during this specific pay period. This is what the salary was. But they forgot that I got a spreadsheet from them in April of the same fiscal year that had what their actual salaries were. And, when you do things like that, and then you look at these guys collecting the trash, or the firefighters that are riding the rigs, and the police officers that are patrolling our streets, or the human services employees, some of them are very underpaid. And they actually did a pay progression plan in there without our vote either. I just found out. I just discovered that. And then you're giving these executives these huge raises when everybody else is only getting 3% in fiscal year 2025.
Kim Payne told me a month or so ago when I talked to him, he goes,
he was a great city manager.
I've heard that over and over again.
He was a great city manager.
He said, I need 4. I just need 4 votes.
Sure.
And you're telling me 7 people on council, 3 of you are opposed to this stuff the city manager's doing. And maybe it didn't come to a vote, but if 3 of you are opposed and the others aren't willing to speak up, doesn't that basically say they're okay with it?
They're either okay with it, they're either part of the cover-up, or they don't even understand what's happening.
You said that you talk to different people and they have different perspectives on you.
Absolutely.
I've talked to a lot of people, not just preparing for this interview, but just, hearing different things. And let me throw out some of the terms that I've heard people use to describe you.
I'd love to hear it.
You ready?
Let's hear it.
All right. I'm going to my notes. First time today, Kira. Bully.
No.
No? Virtue signaling.
Definitely not.
Grandstanding.
Some issues are worth grandstanding for.
Adversarial.
There's always 2 sides.
Nitpicky.
Attention to detail is something that the military drove into me that I will never be able to get rid of.
Hates government.
I don't hate government. I do think that the private sector does a much better job solving the problems in society, except for the things that government's really good at. But government's great at public safety, right? We should be investing in public safety. Government is, it keeps our water moving. We've got great water resources. Things like there's certain things that are very necessary of government. We need to make sure that the things that are necessary, infrastructure, streets, roads, water, public safety, things like that, that they're the best of the best. And everything else we need to really kind of reconsider, should we be in the business of that?
Do you think that the way you, and I'll use the word attack, and I don't mean that in a negative way.
Sure.
But the way you attack the things that you're going after, the confrontational nature that we've seen. And it seems to me, again, outsider's perspective, I don't watch the meetings, but that because you're who you are and you're how you are, that you have other people on council who are, the minute you say something, I'll bring up Donald Trump. Donald Trump could say, it's Monday and people will argue with him just because he's Donald Trump.
Sure.
Do you feel you get that same reaction on council?
All the time. Staff completely obstructs requests that I make. They actually tried to charge me to provide information to me about that was budget related during the budget process, that they threatened to charge me to make me pay as a council member to pay for information that I requested as part of the budget process.
Mm.
The roadblocks from staff are unbelievable. And
now I've also heard that you don't treat the staff very well.
I think that I treat them fairly. I expect them to do what their job is. They have job descriptions. It's called a position.
Do you go too far in meetings? I'll use the word attacking. That's not the right word that I really want, but that's the one that's coming to mind.
Sure.
Where, you're going after people too harshly.
Can you give me an example?
I can't because, again, this is just
what you were told.
This is secondhand stuff.
Yeah, so that's a lot of that's probably rhetoric, and I'm interested in the facts about it. So if you can give me a specific example,
I can.
We can, and that's why I brought up the situation that we just had, because that was a situation where they tried to carry the news in advance. Misjuns accused of politicizing emergency response to storm or something. That was the headline the next day after that meeting. I handed the news in advance reporter the evidence that she lived in Alabama. And I explained to him why I wanted to know that we have a duty to keep our citizens safe.
Do you think that you could be more effective if you dialed it back? And I'm going to use the same, I mean, I know I've said this,
Sure.
I've heard this, I've heard other people say it, I've heard experts say it about Donald Trump, how he'd be a much more effective president if he could dial back the rhetoric, the things he says, the posts he makes, the comments he makes, just all of that stuff. Leave that all aside, because again, when people are coming after you, or they're giving you a hard time, or they don't want to listen to what you're saying because it's you, do you think that you could be, if there were a little bit softer, gentler Marty Misjuns, do you
Sure.
think you could be more effective and get more accomplished and things could run smoother at city council?
It's not all me. There's seven of us.
Understood.
Right. So I think that.
But would you agree that you're the protagonist?
Not always.
Not always. I get a majority of the time. I mean, you're the bull in the china shop here.
I'm the one that asks the tough questions.
I understand, but sometimes it's how you ask those questions.
And I understand that too. However, if you saw behind the scenes, if people saw behind the scenes, the amount of obstruction by city staff, the citizens, that they elect us, they don't elect city staff.
So you think the staff's a bigger problem than some of the other council members?
Absolutely. 100%.
Now I'll ask you, give me a couple of examples.
Again, I just gave you one a minute ago about threatening to charge me. There was instead of responding to questions or things like that, making all these allegations when we're asking them to do things or provide information, all of a sudden it becomes harassment for staff members to say that council members are harassing them because they're asking for information. That's, I mean, in a normal functioning organization, you wouldn't have that kind of leadership at the top. That's a complete lack of leadership. Imagine, so you guys, you don't have a board of directors here, right?
No.
But imagine you did, right? So you're the CEO, WL&I is publicly traded, you got a board of directors. Are you going to tell the board of directors that they're harassing you when they're asking you for information?
Depends how they ask.
They're asking you for information in writing, in an email.
Okay. That seems pretty straightforward. But again, what I wanted to kind of, find out was the way that you ask. Sure. And, understand asking in an email is, but, again, I mean, the other thing that I had heard, speaking with someone who you know very well, and you'll probably know when I use this quote, but he said,
I won't name them.
You won't name them. You don't walk around kicking every barking dog. Pick your spots. And that was where I was, driving at the nitpicking thing a little bit earlier. It's if you're going after every little thing, I mean, maybe there are some things that are more important. And, if you focus on the bigger things and don't disrupt everything in these long meetings.
So I'm not disrupting everything in these long meetings. Again, you said you haven't watched any meetings or work sessions in a while. I think that the two core issues that I will never back down on are the way our taxpayers' dollars are spent and public safety. Right? When I'm seeing what I'm seeing now, digging into things, we need an audit. We need a management audit. We need a financial audit. And I'm not talking about the annual comprehensive financial report. I'm talking about an internal audit of the city of Lynchburg. What I found with those salary increases on information that is publicly available that anybody can request is egregious. The same thing, creating positions. There's a financial impact of that. The city manager creating a position. The Employment Policies and Procedures Manual says that full-time positions are approved by council. We never approved that position. He just created it in the middle of the year, or right as the fiscal year started, after we already approved the budget, right? Can't do that kind of stuff. He does not understand that the citizens elect council members to call the shots. And what he is doing is he is trying to force what he wants on the council. Right now it's working because he's co-opted 4 of them. Right? But, you know, do we need $30 million spent on a reimagined pool and library? Could we have fixed those things and got them in tip-top shape and spent several million? Sure. Fully in support of making sure the things that we have as our public infrastructure are properly maintained and cared for. But we're not in a position right now to just go blowing money on reimagining all this stuff. In the budget update they did the other day, they're talking about, I think, $2 million additional in debt service coming down the pike that we've got to look at. That's the borrowed money for all these big projects. I asked if the library and the pool were included in that, or the amphitheater. No, not included. Not included. Not even in that extra $2 million that's coming down the pike. That's 2 pennies on the real estate tax.
So there's more coming.
It's tough enough for the individuals, families, and businesses of our community to make ends meet right now. We do not need to be putting any additional burden on them. And we need 4 council members. Right now, we've only got 3 that put our citizens first and put their wallets first to get that under control.
And we're talking with Marty Misjuns of Lynchburg City Council here on No Holds Barred. So you've only got 3, but there are 6 Republicans.
There's some people that would say that there aren't 6 Republicans.
Okay. Is there hope for getting all of you guys on the same page before the next election cycle?
You know, I don't know.
Now, most people are going to say you're the biggest stumbling block, but who's the biggest stumbling block in your opinion?
I don't think I'm going to go there. I'm not here to attack anybody.
What do you think of Team Lynchburg?
The name is completely unoriginal because it's how Winter Benda, the city manager, addresses his emails out. So I thought that was something interesting that I picked up on. It's more like Team City Manager or Team Downtown. I'm trying to figure out which one it is right now. Because what they've done is they've added this gentleman, nice guy, you know, he's got a lovely family wife, all that.
So it's 3 Republicans. It's Stephanie, it's Larry, and
here's the thing.
Okay, well they're claiming that they're going to
claiming he's a Republican, right?
And Boswell's
never been to a Republican meeting in Lynchburg. He's not even on the email list. Okay, so we've already confirmed that. Chairman of the Downtown Lynchburg Association. And under his watch, there's been a whole lot of this LGBTQ drag show stuff pushed downtown that was supported or amplified by the Downtown Lynchburg Association. We've gotten a lot of email complaints the conservatives on city council have about the DLA specifically in the previous years because of some of the things that have been going on in some of the businesses that they promoted with these grants and so forth. And we don't really have much control over it. But, you know, I just don't think that taxpayer dollars should be going towards promoting drag brunch or Pride Month or anything like that. Yet we have a full-time city employee that's the director of the Downtown Lynchburg Association, and that employee works for that board that he's the chairman of, and they're the ones doing all that promotion and all that stuff. I got a problem with that, and that's going to be a hard thing for Mr. Boswell to be able to address.
So it's him and Stephanie and Larry,
sure,
that are running. They say on the Republican ticket, they're running as Republicans.
They got to get nominated.
They have to get nominated, but it's the 3 of them that are running for the 3 at-large spots.
Sure.
So they have to get nominated. Other people may get into the mix. Might Marty Misjuns be one of them?
I have seriously considered it. I have not made a decision yet. Got to pray about it some more. Got to make sure the family's on board, right? But I know one thing. What I know is I wouldn't want to be a Democrat running for city council this year because after what they've been doing to us in Richmond, they're going to get walloped. 50 new taxes. they're looking at 50 new taxes in Richmond, right? So I think that the 3 Republican nominees, are whoever they are, will win, hands down. I've had a lot of donors, volunteers, supporters begging me. I'm just not there yet. I haven't made a decision yet.
You want more of this?
I will go where I need to go and do what I need to do for these citizens. Just how it is.
So this is all for the citizens, not for Marty Misjuns, not for your ego, not for...
Nope. I mean, it's not complicated. I did it for him in the fire department. I served him on city council, served him overseas, served him sitting outside Norfolk Naval Base. It's kind of how I'm wired. It's how I've always been wired. And, you know, I truly believe in conservative Republican policy. I know it makes a difference. I know when we get government out of the way, we keep the money in the pockets of our individuals, families, and businesses and let them make decisions on how they want to spend that and invest that. That's what's going to get us to a more prosperous city. Not more spending, not more government programs, not more fancy reimaginations of existing government buildings. We need to maintain our infrastructure. We need to be excellent stewards of our tax dollars. We need to reduce that burden as much as we possibly can. And we need to keep our citizens safe.
When do you plan to make a decision on whether or not you're going to run again? When do you need to?
I got to look at the timeline.
When do you need to? Do you know?
So the Lynchburg Republican Committee voted to do a firehouse primary as their method of nomination. Something also that came to my attention today that's up in the air also with some of that timing is the caboose budget, apparently. This is something I just learned today at the state level. The redistricting constitutional amendment, the special election that we have coming up, if that were to pass, they would have to change the timelines because of the petition signature. Like, I think right now the petition signature requirement for congressional districts is before the special election. So if there's new congressional districts, then they've got to completely change. It's what they're doing is a complete mess up there, you know. Stealing our congressmen from us. It's crazy. It's absolutely absurd what they're doing with that redistricting resolution. After Virginia was loud and clear on that, the things they're shoving down our throats. You know,
but as far as council, the Republican
timeline on that could change because the dates could get pushed back depending on what happens with this April 21st thing. So there's some things in limbo there. But I think the decision would obviously have to be before the firehouse primary. And I would imagine I'll probably make a decision by the middle of March. There's plenty of time. Right now, the primary focus I have is trying to figure out how we can reduce our tax burden in this budget process. I'm anticipating they're going to want to keep spending. And we need to focus on keeping our citizens safe and keeping their tax burden as low as we possibly can. And I'm also really, really focused on this public hearing we have on Thursday on the zoning amendment for the abortion clinics.
Mm-hmm. Is there one in Lynchburg now?
There isn't.
When's the last time there's been one?
I think it was 2000, somewhere in the late 2000s or early 2010s was when Planned Parenthood closed in Lynchburg.
So it's been more than a decade.
Yeah, it's been a while. But
is that a real concern?
Sure. If the constitutional amendment passes in the fall, and I'm just being realistic and pragmatic looking at what happened in Ohio, we're going to be the access point for the South, right? It's already happening in Roanoke. Talk to people that are pro-life activists down there. Out-of-state tags all the time going into the abortion clinics in Roanoke and Benton. They're turning Virginia into a destination for abortion tourism. And once that's codified in the Constitution, it's going to be, it's a money thing. That people don't do that for anything other than money. That's the reason that industry exists. It's a disgusting industry. And if we can have the land use restrictions in place to make sure that we aren't going to be allowed to prohibit it, we can't do that outright. It's not something we would be able to do. It would get thrown out in court more than likely. But what we can do is we can put land use restrictions in place and say it has to be a certain amount of distance from churches and schools and daycare facilities and, family-centered things. And hotels and motels was something staff added that I thought was really clever. And then limit the number of zoning districts. Right now in Lynchburg, an abortion clinic could come and set up shop if they buy the real estate right next to any one of our high schools, Heritage, EC Glass, LCA, New Covenant. If it's a commercially zoned district, no notice, no hearing, no nothing. They're up and running, and we would have it's also a very unregulated industry. And the other piece of this zoning amendment that's really crucial is putting the conditional use permit process in place, which is the same thing we have for firing ranges, that would require it to come before the council for a vote. So it specifically defines it. So now we've limited the locations where they can go. So there's specific locations where they can go.
And they need permission of council.
And then they would have to come and it would be a vote before council.
Okay.
Which is totally different.
Couple more questions for you on this upcoming primary.
Sure.
For the Republicans. Is this one that you anticipate people like myself who might not normally be dialed into very local politics get our adult beverages and our popcorn ready because it's going to be a wild ride?
I don't know.
Speculate for me.
You want me to speculate? So is it going to be a wild ride? It depends. I can tell you what I would love to see in the contest is debates and town halls and scorecards. That's what I'd love to see.
Okay.
Let the best ideas win.
And then finally,
let the ideas that we could afford win as a city.
Finally,
because if you notice, Team Lynchburg,
yes.
Guess what's not in their messaging at all? The tax burden. Larry Taylor and Stephanie Reed, who campaigned 4 years ago on lowering the tax burden, have completely abandoned that in all the messaging that's coming from Team Lynchburg. Haven't seen it yet.
My last question for you.
Sure.
You've got almost a year left on council in your term. Okay. Whether or not you decide to run again. Is there any chance we see a softer, gentler Marty Misjuns who still wants to fight for what he's going to fight for, but does it in a way that might be more, like I said, kindler and gentler and maybe
our conversation today?
Well, is that what we're going to see from you?
So what I would say to that is this. Don't pay attention to the rhetoric, right? Understand that in media, sensational gets clicks.
100%.
Watch the work sessions and the meetings.
Well, but I might say to you, be more careful of offering up those sound bites that you know are going to put you in an awkward position amongst a majority of the people who don't pay attention to the work sessions.
And I can't really stop the sound bites coming from others.
Not others, no.
And the News and Advance just turned the soundbite from somebody else into the headline.
So a softer, gentler Marty Misjuns for the rest of your term?
Could be.
Could be.
Could be.
Could not be.
Well, I mean, it depends on the approach. We've got to hold the city staff accountable. The citizens deserve to know what's going on. So what I will say is anticipate the media coverage is going to be interesting when I start putting some of this information out in meetings and asking questions about how it happened. And, think that's going to be, it's going to be very interesting to see how the media spins that. That's all I'm going to say. Because they seem to not want to touch the things. Cardinal News is a little, they're better. I really appreciate the in-depth work that they've been doing since they've gotten the new reporter here. But most of the time, you know, it's they try to put some kind of spin on it or whatever. I'm just, go look. If you see something that looks, like you said, sensational, like I said, go look at the source information. Go watch if you're interested, if you want to know, go watch the meeting. Go watch the work session.
Marty, thank you.
This has been great. I really appreciate this opportunity, and we're going to do it again. I can already tell.
Oh boy, get your popcorn.
It'll be good.
Marty Misjuns here on No Holds Barred.
Thank you.